Health is Wealth with Dr. Mike is brought to you by Pizzaville. You can still enjoy your favorite pizza and follow a plant-based diet with Pizzaville's new vegan, dairy-free mozzarella cheese. Plant-based, soybean-free, nut-free, gluten-free, and casein-free. Substitute on any pizza at no additional charge. Health is Wealth with Dr. Mike on 1059 The Region.
You're listening to 1059 The Region, and this is Health is Wealth with Dr. Mike Carrozza. I'm Tina Cortez. Good morning, Dr. Mike.
Good morning, Tina, and good morning to all our listeners.
Now, if this is November, it must also be Movember. Now in its 14th year in Canada, the annual campaign encourages fundraising in men's health, specifically suicide prevention, prostate, and testicular cancer. Joining Health is Wealth, a Movember fundraiser himself, Sam Wilson. Sam, thank you for joining the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Hey, Sam. So thanks for joining us. I just wanted to, if you can help just discuss with our listeners in terms of how you got involved with Movember as a community development coordinator. Just tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure, yeah. So I've been working in the nonprofit sector for a few years, but Movember has been a cause that's been important to me for a while. So Movember, we raise funds and awareness for mental health and suicide prevention, prostate cancer, and testicular cancer. So my uncle had been living with metastatic prostate cancer for a while, and about 3 years ago, my father was also diagnosed with prostate cancer. Long story short, we lost both of those men in my life over the last 2 years. It's a cause that's extremely important to me, to get men to be open about checking in on their physical health, but as well as being incredibly open about their mental health as well. So while this is a job for me, and I love, talking to people like you and getting the message out there, it's something that I am extremely personally passionate about. So I carry those men in my life with me in every day I do this job.
And Sam, do you find that men are more open to talking about it now?
Yeah, so the tendency towards being more open about mental health has shifted in terms of a cultural lens over the last, decade or so. So that's great news. But at the end of the day, male suicide, the stats are really, really staggering. 3 out of 4 suicides in Canada are by men. We lose a man to suicide once every 60 seconds globally. So obviously, there's still some work that needs to be done. So that's what Movember is all about. We want men to know it's okay to have emotions and feelings and to talk about those things and to open up. And at the same time, to be able to check in on our friends and family to really get into, what's going on a deeper level, because we know that just talking can be life-saving.
And absolutely. And for some people, for our listeners out there, a lot of, and even our men and women, they maybe don't understand that Movember is not just about prostate health, right?
No, exactly. Yeah. So we started with prostate cancer. Those are our early origins, but we've since included testicular cancer and mental health and suicide prevention. Prostate cancer is still prevalent. 1 in 9 Canadian men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer in their lifetime. Once you turn 50 years old, if you're of African or Caribbean descent, or you have a family history, that's the risk is even greater. So starting that conversation with your doctor about PSA testing at 45, 50 is super important. But then, testicular cancer is the opposite end of that. It's a young man's disease, and it's most common in men 15 to 34. And a lot of guys don't even know they're in that category, right? And so that's what Movember is all about, is being able to check yourself for the early stages of testicular cancer and knowing who to talk to about that. And then, of course, like I said, mental health and suicide prevention, even more so now during this very strange time we find ourselves in, is prevalent, and being able to talk about what's going on is huge.
And I'm a stats guy, so I want to talk a little bit about stats. I love statistics, and I love, obviously, being in medicine, we love data and stats. And so every day, 63 Canadian men are diagnosed with prostate cancer. 3 out of 4 suicides in Canada are by men. So that's huge. That's something I actually did not even know. And then, on average, Canadian men die 4 years earlier than women. Oh, my goodness. Yeah. And then now, what you just mentioned about testicular cancer is the most commonly diagnosed cancer in young men. And so in Canada, 8,000 men are estimated to be living with or beyond a testicular cancer diagnosis. Wow. Talk about awareness.
It's staggering, right? And so specifically in that mental health and suicide piece as well, suicide is the second leading cause of death among Canadians 15 to 44. And so here's the thing about men's health, and you mentioned the stat of men dying on average 4 years younger than women in Canada. It's actually 6 years younger globally as well, and it's largely because men don't talk about what's going on from a really young age. There's been this really, really, harmful stigma hanging around boys and men that it's not manly to open up about what's going on. You're seen as less of a man if you're talking about what's happened in your day-to-day life or something that you're struggling with. And to put it really bluntly, that is killing men too young. So that's what Movember is all about. It's what this month is all about, is to get men to open up and check in on each other.
Now, you talked about how this is an unusual year. 2020 marks the 14th annual Movember campaign in Canada. How will the fundraising be different this year?
So the fundraising is different in that, like everything else in the world right now, most things have shifted to be virtual, right? So we're seeing that a lot of people are actually coming out of the woodwork and are doing fundraising in some really, really creative ways. I mean, obviously, sort of the guidelines for gathering are different in almost every place across the country. So we're seeing some really cool initiatives like some pub trivia nights online. We actually have a university that's doing a socially distant run based off of the recent Borat movie release, where they're all showing up in mankinis, actually. So it's a bit of an eyesore for sure, but it's definitely catching some attention. So what's really, really great about this campaign and all of our campaigns, but people are really coming forward and sharing their stories. When they can't be physically in a place, in a workplace, gathering funds and encouraging teammates to sign up for Movember, they're still having those important conversations, talking about what's impacting them, and that's really what Movember is all about at the end of the day.
And just for our listeners, I want to do some key messages. First of all, the inspiration based on this particular show and the whole inspiration based on Movember has inspired me personally to grow my Mo. Definitely. So I'm going to Mo to save a bro, right, Sam?
You got it.
Slogan. Yeah, and definitely I'll post my Mo on Instagram so our listeners can sort of catch it over the course of the next 4 weeks. But before that, let's just discuss some key points as to what people can do, almost like me and like other men out there who could make a difference. So first off, so anybody can participate. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, I mean, the most traditional way and kind of what we were founded on is to grow that mustache for sure. It's kind of our hairy ribbon, if you will. But there are tons of other ways to get involved, for sure. If you don't want to grow a mustache or you're, follically challenged, if you will, you can join our Move activity, which is to run or walk or bike, whatever you want to do, 60 kilometers over the month. And that 60-kilometer minimum goal symbolizes the one man we lose every 60 seconds to suicide. And so that's a great way to get involved. And, Movember right now is a great way to have that social connectivity that is so important for mental health right now. And you can challenge friends to run and walk and do whatever they want to do. The other way you can get involved is to host. So that's hosting a virtual event. It can be anything from, like I said, a trivia night to a work social, to streaming your favorite video game, whatever you want to do. And then finally, our newest way is to mow your own way. And that is literally anything else you can think of right now. The limits don't exist as long as you're getting friends and family on board and having those conversations. That's what we care about.
And we began this conversation, Sam, with, talking about those that you've lost personally. You lost your dad in 2018. You lost your cousin in 2019. You lost your uncle also in 2019. What was it like for them going through it? And how has it been for you to move beyond what happened to them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So my uncle had metastatic prostate cancer, and he was diagnosed a bit too late, obviously. So that's, when the cancer is not isolated to the prostate, moves outside, usually to the bones. And his journey was difficult. It was really, really hard to see him, over 10 years. 10 years is a long time from diagnosis to death, for sure, and largely in part due to programs that were funded by amazing organizations like Movember. His life was prolonged, and that was wonderful, obviously, to have him around for as long as we could. My dad, on the other hand, was diagnosed with prostate cancer. He essentially beat it, and then he was diagnosed with a second form of much rarer cancer. He had neuroendocrine cancer, and we lost him from about, diagnosis to death, 7 weeks. And he went downhill incredibly quickly. So those two deaths had a profound effect. And you mentioned my cousin as well, who overdosed tragically. So those deaths had a profound effect on my mental health. And I had been, extremely privileged most of my life to not have to deal with anything traumatic, to be fair. And when it happened, I went into a depression, for sure. And it was the first time in my life where I was truly physically and mentally affected by something like that. And it's gotten better. Every day is better. You still think about it around, key moments like birthdays and anniversaries and things like that. But what was really, really helpful for me was having a best friend and a wonderful support system who checked in on me every day. And even when I didn't want to, thought I didn't want to, I was talking about what was going on. And that's really, really what pulled me out of it. And to this day is a preventative measure. Being able to open up to my friends and knowing they're there for me is huge. So it was a life-defining moment. And I like to think that I'm, making strides to helping other men not have to go through the same thing that myself and my family went through.
Wow, what a compelling story, and so happy that you were able to come on the show. And I tell you what, I'm definitely with you on this, and so are many thousands and hundreds of thousands of men across the country, and here to support, your cause, and in the name of your family and other men, and of course with the mental health being on the rise. Yeah, for sure. I think this is something that all men should participate in, and I know pretty much it's really easy. So for our listeners, you just go to Movember.com, sign up, Mo takes a pic, and just they can donate. I know myself, I put my personal goal. So for our listeners out there, they can just check out our page, and please donate. I'm looking for $2,000 for the month, and hopefully examples like what we're doing here, and hundreds and thousands of other men across the country who can help with this initiative. And this can help. I mean, I know it has helped fund about 1,250 innovative men's health projects globally, nearly about 300 of those right here in Canada. And you definitely heard it here on Health is Wealth. And of course, thank you very much, Sam Wilson, Community Development Coordinator for Movember, coming on the show, telling us his compelling story. And brother, I wish you the best. And we're definitely, our thoughts and our prayers are definitely with you and your family and the rest of the world here in this wonderful month to just create awareness for Movember.
Thank you so much for having me. No, and thank you for what you're doing and the fundraising you're pushing. And you said it best. I don't even need to repeat it. Just go to Movember.com and sign up. You should work for us, man.
After the break, Dr. Mike and his team fundraise for Movember. Those details are coming up. This is Health is Wealth on 105.9 The Region. Stay with us.
Have a question for Dr. Mike? Call us at 416-335-1059. Tweet us at 1059 The Region or email us at info@1059theregion.com. More with Dr. Mike and Health is Wealth when we come back.
It was a rainy day when Pizzaville realised that some big pizza conglomerates want to make the cheapest pizza. Some want to be the fastest. At Pizzaville, we want to make the best pizza, stone-baked, the traditional Italian way. It's what we strive for every day, to be the best, not the fastest or the cheapest. Oh, cue the announcer.
Pizzaville Stone-Baked Pizza. Fiercely Canadian. Authentically Italian.
Health is Wealth is back with Dr. Mike on 105.9 The Region.
You're listening to 105.9 The Region, and welcome back to Health is Wealth. I'm Tina Cortez, and over to Dr. Mike with today's next guest, and we continue our conversation about Movember. Dr. Mike.
Thank you, Tina. Joining us on Health is Wealth is my colleague from Applemed, of course, is Dr. Ryan Shakitano. Thanks for being with us, Dr. Ryan. Of course, I brought Dr. Ryan on the show because we're inspired personally, both of us, being, of course, having being men and wanting to support Movember, and of course, hearing Sam Wilson's compelling story, and it just makes us even more determined for this wonderful cause. And we are definitely growing our mows to help some bros, right, Dr. Ryan?
You betcha, yeah. We're getting the Fu Manchu going this month.
Yeah, and I mean, this is not just about prostate awareness. I mean, as we've heard from Sam, it's more about men's health. And of course, mental health is on the rise with this COVID-19. And, based on what Sam was mentioning, a lot of men are having issues, and a lot of men really don't talk about it and don't talk about too much of their issues. So like if they're depressed, if they're not feeling well, if mentally they're not really all there, there's really, traditionally, unfortunately, the stigma of men are just not to present themselves as a weak being and maybe break down. But this is not true, right, Dr. Ryan?
Yeah, we need to be more accepting in terms of all different health aspects, whether it be prostate, mental health, or otherwise. And men tend to be a little bit stubborn when it comes to going to the doctor, and they feel, or some of them, I guess, feel that there is this stigma, that they're weak or whatever the case might be. But getting to the doctor and getting some screening tests done and discussing different things that can be proactive in terms of food to eat and blood tests to do and looking at markers of inflammation, all these sorts of things can lead to better health outcomes. And an example would be with erectile dysfunction. That is one thing that I found has brought men to the doctor quite frequently. And a lot of men don't realize it's years and years, likely, of cardiovascular issues and blood sugar issues that kind of led to this moment. So it's about being proactive, being preventive, and getting those screening tests done.
And let's talk about, prostate health. We're going to talk about diet and quickly. So what is a biomarker that is very important when you're at the age of 41 over that we should test? So there's a blood marker that we test for prostate health. What's that level? And let's talk about who can get it tested and when.
Yeah, so it's prostate-specific antigen is what you're referring to. And I'll pass it on to you for kind of the specific number we're looking for. It's about 0.5 nanogram. But I wanted to get your opinion because you've seen quite a bit more in terms of prostate issues. So your opinion, Dr. Mike, on that?
Well, first off, I mean, the PSA levels is extremely important. We want to get these levels checked. We want to monitor them. We want them to be as low as possible, number one. There are variations. There are some people who are upper limits, but it's normal to be that way as long as you monitor it and it doesn't get this jump. Okay, so you definitely want to look at these levels, see where it's at, and there's real simple tools in order to do that. So before, obviously, the digital rectal examination was something of the past. Nowadays, it's the blood markers that we look at, and this is the prostate-specific antigen that you mentioned. We want to make sure that these levels are in check. But that's not it, right, Dr. Ryan? There's also things of, testosterone that being elevated can cause an issue. And this is where you get this benign prostatic hyperplasia, right? This is where that prostate gets sort of overgrown and starts blocking, and this is where testosterone becomes a problem. So for the men out there who are pumping testosterone in their blood by maybe injections and try to get pumped up, and Dr. Ryan, you can add to this as well, since it's a level of performance. I mean, there's a reason why it's definitely banned in a lot of professional sports, but it can definitely cause detriment. So I have a lot of patients, and we have a lot of patients that come into our office and say, hey, look, doc, can you just shoot me up with testosterone? And the answer is no. This is a problem, and this can lead to a lot of problems. Dr. Ryan, you want to shed some light?
Yeah, of course. I tell all my athletes when they're having this discussion with me and they're asked, like, look, can I just take something like this and make my athletic performance more accelerated? It's like, well, listen, things like testosterone, growth hormone, they don't discriminate in the body in terms of what's growing and what's not. So sure, your muscles might grow, but so will your organs, so will your tissues, and it will increase your risk of certain cancers. So I love that you brought that up. That's so important. It's not just about PSA. PSA is a marker, and it's important to get a baseline and see where it is, of course, but it's so much more than that, testosterone being one of those amazing components to look at.
And if we're focusing on prostate cancer, so Dr. Mike, are there those foods to avoid and maybe those foods that it could protect you as well?
So for sure, we discussed, some of the dietary options that people should avoid, and we've mentioned them on the show, and we'll just reiterate this to our listeners. So for sure, dairy products can lead to more inflammation. Filtered water is really a big concern because lead exposure can increase the risk of prostate cancer. Eating chicken with the skin will increase the risk of progression if prostate cancer is there. And then even like egg consumption that is overly consumed, and things like red meat and poultry can increase the risks. And this because it drives things like inflammation. But foods to protect you, so those are the foods that can possibly harm you in too much. But foods that protect you: broccoli, fish, veggies, things like watermelon that contain lycopene, and tomatoes, of course, we know about that red pigment. And then green tea, which is more epigallocatechin gallate, EGCG. And then tomatoes, because they have, again, the lycopene. But in terms of treatment and the vitamins, it's the saw palmetto, which is, it's a herb, and it grows, and the extraction of this will actually treat BPH, which is the benign prostatic hyperplasia, which is almost like a precursor. And then not to mention things like turmeric, which are really good. And then Dr. Ryan mentioned about the prostate-specific antigen, and this is something that I think a lot of people need to get tested about early, right? Because early detection is key, right, Dr. Ryan?
Yeah, you bet. Especially with something like PSA, it's not specific for prostate cancer. I want to make sure that's clear. It can be a sign of prostatitis or inflammation of the prostate, or it can be kind of benign prostate hyperplasia, BPH. But getting your PSA levels tested and being able to monitor them and have that informed discussion with your practitioner is so important in terms of prevention.
And one more quick question. Are there symptoms to look for?
The inability to avoid is a big concern. That's what I can say to men. So basically, inability or difficulty urinating, I think, is going to be an issue. And if men are having this issue, this is a telltale sign of an inflammatory process that has begun in the prostate. Predisposing factors may be any kind of sexual dysfunction related to that as well.
And Dr. Mike and Dr. Ryan, you're both fundraising for Movember. How can our listeners support you?
Yes, we're going to Mo's to save some bros, and me and Dr. Ryan, you're going to see us on Instagram. We're going to take some pictures, of course. So we are actually asking a lot of our listeners and a lot of our patients to donate. We're trying to raise up to $2,000 for the month, and we hope that we can get the support of many, of course. Again, listening to Sam's compelling story and hundreds of thousands of Canadians who are suffering from not only prostate health issues, testicular cancer, but also mental health. And we're really doing this together, and we hope that people can donate. And you can just go to Movember.com and really just donate. And we're hoping that and you follow us on Instagram, and we'll be able to post, and you'll see our progression of our mows. Right, Dr. Ryan? How's your mow growing?
You betcha. I'm starting from scratch, so it's a little bit thin right now, but we'll see by the end of the month where we get it.
Yeah. Sounds good. We will be watching the progress. And Dr. Mike, if listeners want to connect with you at Applemed, how can they do that?
Okay, so they can see us at on Instagram, on IGTV, Applemed Clinic. They can hear our podcasts on health as well, or they can see us in person and come to our office by calling us at 905-303-4622. And then they can also visit our website at applemed.ca, and we are here to help. And this is Health is Wealth with Dr. Mike. And thank you, Dr. Ryan, for joining us. And thank you, Tina. And for our listeners out there, stay healthy and stay safe.
Previous episodes of Health is Wealth on 1059theregion.com. Thanks for listening.
Connect with us on Twitter at 1059theregion or call 416-335-1059 or email info@1059theregion.com. This is 1059 The Region. Health is Wealth is brought to you by Applemed Clinic, located at 3560 Rutherford Road, Unit 45. Applemed takes a results-driven approach to patient care. Remember, an Applemed day keeps illness away.